Hi, welcome to Become a Media Maven. I'm Christina Nicholson. I am your host, a former TV reporter and anchor turned owner of a public relations agency. And today, I am answering more questions. I did this last week when one of my media mentoring program clients reached out, asked about how to use social media to work better with your PR efforts. And today I'm answering two questions. I actually emailed my list and I said, do you have any questions about these two topics? And if you do, fire away, I will answer them on the podcast. So I actually did this at the end of last year and I'm just getting around to this episode. So thank you for being patient with me. So I'm going to go specific on the answers to these two questions because I found a common theme with them, that this is something that a lot of people were wondering about and a lot of people were asking about. I didn't just hear about this in my email list, but I also just hear about it out in the streets of the internet, people, okay? So let's get into it. But first, if you have any questions that you want me to answer, I will leave a link to join my email list, join my newsletter. I send it out every other Thursday, so you can check it out. I will link to that, so you can email me anytime, ask me any questions, and you can find that in the description of this video and in the show notes of this podcast. So the big question that I asked my list that 3 people responded to, again, where I saw a common theme, so I wanted to address it here on the podcast instead of just an email, was this. What's your biggest frustration with learning about how to get attention without using ads? And Diana Henrich, she commented 2 different things. One was the amount of time it takes to write and repurpose content consistently. Totally understand this, but Diana, I'm happy that you want to create content consistently because I think it's the best way to get leads. It's the way I've gotten leads. I've tried working with salespeople before with my agency. It didn't really work out. And when I look at my client list, everybody comes organically. They either hear me creating content on my own platforms like podcast, YouTube, or they see it online, or they hear me on other podcasts, or they read about me in other places. So I love that you understand the importance of this. How do you do it consistently without going crazy? Here are some tips. Number 1 is put it in a calendar on a recurring basis. Like every Tuesday between 9 a.m. and 12 p.m., you're creating content or you're repurposing content. And then what does that look like? Like get specific. So for example, I try to record my podcasts and my YouTube videos. First of all, I do it at once. Like what goes on the podcast also goes on YouTube. Obviously, the podcast is audio only. And then I do some editing on YouTube just to make it a little bit more exciting for people who want to watch. One of my goals is to grow my YouTube channel. I get next to no views on my YouTube videos, but hey, I might as well just spend an extra little bit of time to put this on YouTube because so many people do utilize YouTube. It's a search engine, yada, yada, yada. So put the specifics of what you're going to do in your calendar and do it on a recurring basis. And then if you can, hire a VA to help you, especially with the repurposing stuff. For example, I have a VA, and what my VA does every Tuesday is she takes my podcast show notes and she turns them into a blog post on my website so that that episode lives on the website. She also creates a pin and puts that pin on Pinterest. So if people are searching for anything with the keywords of that episode, they'll find it and then they go back to my website. Once they're on my website, they get pixeled. And then if I'm running ads, I can follow them around the internet with my ads. So those are just a couple of ways that you can use a VA to help you repurpose content. You can also, for example, if we're talking about recording a podcast, turn the camera on, have somebody edit it, do the uploads. You can also do this with just typing posts, even if it's text only, this is the sentiment I want to get across. Can you rewrite this in 5 different ways? And then you just schedule those, a couple months apart, and then you're good to go. Another way is just to make it easy for yourself because yes, this is time consuming. So I just told you about how I do YouTube and my podcast all at once. So I'm not doing one thing for YouTube, one thing for my podcast. And then from this long form content, I'm cutting up little chunks of video. And those are the 1-minute videos that I'm putting on my social media. And I don't always say, hey, to hear more, listen to the podcast. These are just small forms of content that I'm sharing just to give value. So that's another way you can do this consistently. It's like you want to kill multiple birds with one stone. Diana also asked a second question. She said, also finding and following up with opportunities to be on other people's platforms since my list is at 22 people right now. So love that you want to grow your list. Super important as well. So you want to be on other people's platforms to grow your list. The first thing I want to ask you is, do you have a freebie? Because again, just not even considering other people's platforms, this is something that you could be sharing on your own platforms and on your own social media. So you need something to give people that they will get value from. And do not be afraid of giving away too much. This may bite me in the ass. It probably does. Because I am somebody who overshares, I give away a lot. But I feel like if I want to collect something, like my inbox is full as it is. The last thing I need is another email. But if I want something from you and I want you to email it to me, it's got to be good. So make sure your freebie is good and you actually give value to people. You could also do an email swap. This is something I've done with a few people where I'll say, hey, if you email my freebie to your list, I'll email your freebie to my list. And then the people who are interested will download your freebie, and then that grows your list. You could also put the freebie in SEO-focused blog posts. Now, a lot of people blog for the sake of blogging. I'm a big fan of doing SEO keyword research first so people actually find the blog and read it. But you can drop that freebie in the blog post if it's relative. You can do this in a couple of ways. You can do it actually in the text if you're writing about something relative, or you can just create a button and put it in there and then just hyperlink the button to your landing page to get people to download that freebie. You can also share the freebies on podcasts when you are a guest. So you can't have more than one freebie. A lot of people do this. I have a couple, but I tend to always go towards the same one. I just think it makes it easier. And when I'm a guest on a podcast, almost always at the end, they will say, where can people find you? And that's when you say, oh, well, I'm on social media at Christina All Day. I also have my podcast, Become a Media Maven. And I have a PDF that if you want to become a contributor, I put together 16 places and contact information that they're accepting contributors. And you can just get that at 16places.com. That is how you share your freebie. You also want to make sure it's on the homepage of your website so it's easy for people to access if they visit your website. You can also share this freebie on Facebook and Instagram in ads. So ads are like crazy expensive now. I wouldn't suggest them unless you really know how to do them. I did just start working with somebody who's a big fan of lead ads. So these aren't like the typical ads where it's like click here to get the freebie. You have a lead form and people don't actually need to leave Facebook or Instagram to sign up to get your freebie. There's a little bit more tech involved because you have to connect everything and all of your platforms need to talk to each other to make sure this person gets on your list and they get the freebie sent to them right after. But the lead forms are a little bit more cheaper, at least right now, than the standard ads. And I have a feeling it's because maybe it's a little bit more advanced to set up and you may need help with it. So maybe not as many people are using them. So something to keep in mind and look into. You can also sponsor an email or a podcast. So again, this is another form of advertising. I am sponsoring an email in the coming months. I will talk about that as I get to other questions in this episode. But that is something that you could also consider. Like, who has a podcast that your ideal customer or client is listening to? Who has a newsletter that is read by your ideal customer or client? Instead of spending money on ads and targeting with those ads, you could just go straight to one source and guarantee the right people are going to get that through a sponsored email or a sponsored podcast. You also want to make sure that your freebie takes people through your funnel, like step 1, step 2, step 3. So let me give you an inside look of what mine looks like. I have 16places.com. You go to 16places.com, you will get 16 places accepting contributors, ideas that they want, and the contact information. After you get that, I'm going to invite you to my bootcamp. My bootcamp is just $37. You can join it anytime it's convenient for you. You can binge it in 3 hours or space it out over 3 days. After my $37 bootcamp, if you still like me, you want to learn more, you want to hang out, I'm going to invite you to my media mentoring program. And that starts at $997. Lifetime access, Facebook group, online course. instant access to me, all of the things. So that's $9.97. And then I do have some offers after that for more one-on-one help and things like that. But you want to start low and slowly go high because you need to build trust with people. Like there's some crazy ass people on the internet today. Everybody's an expert. Everybody's selling something. Start small and work your way up because that's how you build trust with people. So if you want to build your email list, you got to have a freebie, but where does that freebie lead to? And you don't have to have all those answers right now. Just have that freebie, get people on your list, and then send them an email every week, every 2 weeks with something super specific that will help them. And then if you're ready to take things to the next level, ask them what they want. Like, what do you guys want to know more about? What else can I help you with? Ask them a question that prompts responses like I did with this email. I asked people what their biggest frustration is with learning how to get attention without using ads. And they told me. So that gives me ideas on content that I could create to either do it for free, like I'm doing right now, or to create something to sell to them. Okay, Diana, I hope that was helpful. I'm going to go now to Greg Gerber, who answered this question with a question. He said, my biggest frustration with getting attention without using ads is finding the right people to contact in the media. Many media sites, especially business-to-business sites, now require use of online contact forms or use generic email addresses like info@localpaper.com. They don't even list the reporters or editors online anymore, so we can't build relationships with them. Okay, a couple things here, Greg. And you're right. They are making it harder to find their contact information because they're being bombarded by idiots in their inbox. True story, okay? I was one of those people on the receiving end for many years. So there are a couple of things that you can do. One, look at the outlet site, look at the contact page, and look at the about page. Sometimes you will find stuff here, especially if the reporter is more forward-facing, like if they're on TV or if they're in the newspaper. It's harder to find with contributors, but there are ways around that, and I'll tell you what those are in a sec. But again, this is the importance of keeping a spreadsheet. I talked about this in the last episode, keeping a spreadsheet of who you want to pitch. So go to the media outlet's website and check out about or contact. Sometimes they even have a news team section that makes it super easy for you. If you are talking about an online outlet that has a print format, like a newspaper or a magazine, go to Barnes & Noble and get that physical magazine or newspaper. And usually on the inside cover, they will list everybody's name. And if they don't have their contact information, you can use their name to find out more information online. You also want to search social media. So for example, say you have a person's name, but you don't have their contact information. Something that you could do is put their name in on Twitter, for example, or LinkedIn, and that is how you find their contact information. Sometimes it's in their bio, especially on Twitter. Like Twitter is really big for journalists. So you can put their name in the search bar, like treat that as Google, or you could even do like Forbes writers or writer for Forbes and search. And then you'll see a whole bunch of people who have that in their bio. And then they'll usually link to something where you can get their contact information. I know with a lot of websites, when they put who writes something, they'll also link to them on social media or they'll link to their other work. You kind of have to go down a rabbit hole sometimes. But again, this is why keeping a spreadsheet is key, because once you get started and you have 5, 10, 15 contacts, like that's all you need to start building relationships and pitching the media. Again, great information on this on last week's podcast and YouTube video. You can also use software. We use in PR, Cision, Meltwater, Muckrack. I created Podcast Clout for this reason. So again, these are things that are going to cost you a lot of money. Not Podcast Clout. I priced that with the solopreneur in mind, but these other softwares are thousands of dollars a year. And the salespeople are freaking crazy. So I don't suggest using those, but that is an option. Just wanted to mention it here because that is something that people in the PR space use. And then sometimes the generic one is the right one. Like I know info@localpaper doesn't sound like you're reaching the right person, but honestly, sometimes it is. Like when I go to pitch the newsroom that I used to work in, I will pitch that email. I'll also, like send a little message to the people I know specifically there. But a lot of times they have somebody that it is their job to filter news stories through that email. So sometimes that is the right one. And then finally, just poking around on their website. I know I mentioned this at the beginning, the about page, the contact page, the news team page. But if you poke around, you may find a link to social media. If you poke around social media, you may find an email address. So there's a few different ways. Google is your friend. You can find almost anything online. And again, like I said before with Diana, this is something you could hire a VA to do. Just put in the person's name, put in the media outlets where you want to be featured, and have a VA do this research to find out what their social media platform of choice is, and then what their handle is, where you can find them, what their email address is. So this is something that takes time. Again, it's why I created Podcast Clout. Like, you can get a custom pitch list in seconds because this is a time-consuming thing, but it can be done. Okay, Greg, you have one more comment. With people being bombarded by email every day, how do you get messages to stand out among the noise so people actually open an email, read it, and act upon it? Great question. I suggest making the subject line what you would want the article to be titled. You need to make it short and you need to make it catchy. So again, this is when like copywriting and being creative comes into play, but never write press release in the subject line. I think story pitch could work. Don't write interview request because that sounds just like too self-serving. Press release is so antiquated. Pitch might work better, but then you're taking up some space where if you just put like an amazing headline, like imagine it as the headline of an article, like that would work really well. If it's short, sweet, and to the point, like it intrigues somebody to open up the email. So that is a subject line tip. Subject it what you would want the header of the article to read. And then use Boomerang to remind yourself to follow up. I talk about Boomerang in my media mentoring program. I love it because it is a reminder to follow up. If you're unfamiliar with Boomerang, say I'm emailing Greg and I'm saying, Greg, I want to be a guest on your podcast, yada, yada, yada. Obviously, I want to pitch it like that, but just for the sake of example, go with me here. And I know I want to hear back from you. So I'm going to set my Boomerang to come back in a week if you haven't answered me. So in a week, that email that I sent you will show up in my inbox, and that serves as my reminder to follow up with you. And you can set it to come back on a certain day and time. You can set it to say a week, a month, whatever it is. And that is your reminder to follow up. Like, trust me, if you use Boomerang, you won't miss another follow-up. And most of what you get is going to be on the follow-up. So make sure you're following up with people. And then use social media to ping them that you pitched them. I shared an example last week again, that if you send an email to somebody, they're more likely to pay attention to a tag on social media because that is a little bit more rare than an email in their inbox. Like, our inboxes are jam-packed. I know I leave stuff just in my inbox, like, okay, I need to get to this. I'm not going to delete it. I'm going to leave it here. But if somebody sent me a tweet, or they messaged me on Instagram, or they sent me a message on LinkedIn and they said, hey, reaching out to you here because I emailed you about XYZ, haven't heard back yet, then I'm more likely to go back and check it out. So just ping them on social media about the email that you sent them. I did this when I got Amy Porterfield on Headline News. I emailed them. I know their emails are jam-packed. So then I tweeted them to let them know I was in their busy inbox. And then you also just want to remember that the competition is fierce. Like, this is not easy. If it were easy, PR agencies wouldn't cost thousands of dollars a month to hire. We would all be earning exposure in all of the places all day, every day. And that's just not the case. Like, competition is fierce. That's why it's worth so much. That's why everybody wants to earn media. It's free. You get that third-party endorsement. You get the authority, the credibility. Like, it's so much better than advertising. Leaps and bounds, reaching more people than just your organic content on your platforms. So just be patient. Give yourself grace. Like, even the best publicists and PR agencies in the world don't land everything. It's just the nature of the game. So just remind yourself that this is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and the competition is fierce, my friend. Greg, you also added that it's important to develop an email list that the business owns instead of using borrowed platforms like Facebook that can just shut anybody down anytime. With people already receiving so much email, how do you get them to sign up to receive yours? Great question. I already shared a little bit of this with a freebie when I answered Diana's question, but another thing you could do is start a newsletter. Jay Krause and Justin Welsh are amazing at this. I love their newsletters. I know exactly what day and time I'm going to get them. And I will link to Justin Welsh's LinkedIn course and content course just because he's so good at this. And this is the reason why I joined his newsletter. He promotes his newsletter on LinkedIn and on Twitter, where he's very active. And it makes you want to join his newsletter to read what he is teasing the next day. So joining a newsletter is huge. I think his content operating system and LinkedIn operating system may be a big help. And I'm also sponsoring an email in Justin Welsh's newsletter in April. So I mentioned this when I was answering Diana's question. So something that I want to do is build my email list. And one way to do that is to share a freebie with people. So I could have just shared my boot camp, my $37 offer. But instead of asking strangers to buy something from me, I want to give strangers something free. And then I'll tell them about the boot camp so they can decide if they want to buy it down the road. But I think when it comes to people signing up to receive an email, they have to know they're going to get value. And with Justin Welsh's information, both on LinkedIn and Twitter, I knew I was going to get value from his emails because I saw what he was doing on social media. And he would tease to what he was going to put out in his newsletter. And then something else he does is see what 18,742 people are going to learn about XYZ tomorrow. Like he teases it so specifically that it makes you want to be a part of that. So that's something that I took away from him recently that I think could help you. All right, one more. This is from Leah Williams. She said, getting attention isn't the problem. It's translating attention into sales. Oh, honey, isn't that the problem? I mean, I feel like we all have this problem to some degree. I am literally having a call in just 2 hours from now as I record this with the person who handles my Facebook ads because she says, lots of people are clicking to your landing page, but they're not converting. I'm getting the attention, but I'm not translating it into sales. So there's two problems with this. It's either the audience or it's the messaging. And I feel like this is constantly being tweaked no matter how successful you are at sales. Because even if you get a little successful, it's like, okay, how can we get better? You're always asking yourself how you can get better. So this is why this is just like an ongoing struggle with people. So don't think you're alone here. I think everybody has this problem to some degree. So the audience has to want what you are selling now. You have to be focused on the right people. And the audience could be so many things. It could be how much money they make. It could be their gender. It could be their age. It could be where they live. It could be their situation at home. It could be their situation at work, their situation in life. I don't know what you do, Leah, but the audience, my suggestion is to get as specific as possible, be as niche as you possibly can. And then from there, just branch out. And I really feel like it's not about budget. I know a lot of people will give you the excuse, I don't have money to do this, but everybody has a way of paying for things. Look at how many people spend tens of thousands of dollars on college when they know nothing about the ROI they're going to get. Look at how many people have mortgages. Look at how many people have car payments. For some reason, when it comes to online education or building your personal brand or building your business or just personal development, everybody thinks they need to have all of the money in the bank right now to invest. I was like that. I thought that. And then I was like, well, why? Why can't I put this on a credit card? Why can't I make monthly payments? If you're investing in something, the goal is to make money. You cannot make more money or you cannot make a better life for yourself. Whatever you're investing in, you need to know XYZ. You need to learn from somebody who's been there, done that, so you can get ahead. And I always have a hard time with people when they say they don't have the money for it or they can't afford it. I once had somebody tell me that she couldn't join my program because she didn't have any money. She couldn't afford it. And it was $9.97. And on social media, literally the week before, she was posting all about a trip that she took around the world. And I'm like, I know a trip around the world is going to cost more than $1,000. So that was not that she didn't have enough money. She didn't see the value. I didn't do a good job convincing her of the importance of what I was going to do for her. And I feel like a lot of times we have this problem because we're so close to what we do. Like, to me, the value is obvious. Like, I've seen it all day, every day when I worked as a reporter, and then now having a PR agency. Like, I see the value. So I don't do a very good job of communicating it because to me, it's so obvious. I need to change my messaging to reach those people more. So it's either one of those two things, the audience or the messaging. And when it comes to the messaging, a lot of people want to share like what it looks like instead of the benefits. Like, I want to tell you that in the Facebook group, I'm posting media opportunities for my colleagues. Like, that's what I do. And yes, that sounds amazing, right? Like, that's a great product feature, but what are the benefits? The benefits are you don't have to search for story ideas. I'm bringing them to you and I'm giving you the email address. Like, I'm making it so easy for you to get media coverage. And so many times I feel like we focus on the actual product instead of the benefits. Like, the product is this podcast. I'm sitting here and I'm recording it with a microphone and a ring light and my phone. But like, the benefit isn't the podcast. It's what I'm sharing with you. It's the knowledge you're taking away from it. And when you execute it, it's that outcome of your execution. And I feel like there's just so many ways that we can talk about what we do and how we do it, that it's sometimes hard to land that messaging. This is why people make the big bucks, helping online educators with their messaging. So don't just talk about what the goal is. Don't just talk about how I'm going to help you get there. Talk about what happens when you hit that goal. Like, you have to look way out. Don't focus on the logistics because that's not why people buy. People buy based on emotion. So you want to make them feel that emotion at the end of the finish line. And you're always going to be tweaking things after you see how people respond. So to tweak things, you need to measure them somewhat. This is something I am not good at. I'm very bad at. You have to be measuring things. And I think maybe I'm bad at because when it comes to PR, it's so hard to measure because it's a word of mouth thing. And word of mouth and referrals and things like that, they can't be measured like that. Like, being top of mind is hard to measure. But this is why people really like online advertising, because you can measure that. You can see, like, in facts and figures and data and statistics, what is working and what is not working, so you know what to change. So pay attention to some of those things because you're always going to be tweaking to either reach a better audience, to have a better message, whatever it is. Like I said, in 2 hours, less than 2 hours, I will be speaking with somebody to talk about pitchpublicityprofit.com. People are liking the copy to go to that page, but they're not converting. They're not joining the boot camp. Like, the conversion rates are below average. So this happens to everybody. And again, even when those conversion rates are above average, we'll probably still be tweaking. That's just what people do in business. So just don't be discouraged if the attention isn't translating into sales. Just tweak the audience, tweak the messaging, talk to people, whatever people say to you, like, use those words in your messaging, and hopefully you'll start seeing more sales soon, Leah. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Diana, for responding to my email so I can talk about these things that you're struggling with, that you want to know more about. I really appreciate it. I hope I was helpful for you. And I am going to link to a few things here that we talked about. Justin Welsh's content operating system, his LinkedIn operating system. I went through each of these in a day, a separate day, 1 day per course. He's amazing. He will help you with creating amazing content online and on LinkedIn. I'm also going to link to my newsletter so you can get more information like this, and you can ask me questions that I can answer here on the podcast. I'll send you out something every other Thursday. I will link to that in the show notes for this podcast in the description for the video. And that is it for me. Thank you so much for joining me. Tap subscribe if you're on YouTube. Tap follow if you're in your podcast app. Apparently it's follow now. It's not subscribe. I learned that earlier today when I was going through the podcast that I listened to. And I will see you next week here on Become a Media Maven.